Ooh, the last patch of Season 11 is fast approaching, so this really is the last chance for you guys to abuse the most OP champions of Summoners Rift for free LP. So the Jizz is going to reveal the 15 best picks for patch 11.22, and you will also get the best rune page, core items, and maybe even a tip if the champion isn't annoying. In other words, if you play Cat Arena, you are not getting any free tips. Now, if you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so. You do not want to miss the rest of our Season 11 content and pre-season content that's coming up, and let's get into the 15 champions. Now, coming in at number 15, guys, it's the only AD carry on this list. I know, I'm sorry to all you ADC mains, but it's kind of true. The only real AD carry who can compete with these guys is Jhin. But what's funny is that lots of Jhins in lower elos for some reason are running Dark Harvest. Now, it's kind of okay if you think you're going to get a lot of stacks, so if the team compositions are very short range, most of the time this means there's going to be lots of fights and therefore deaths. But here's the thing, guys, ever since Fleet Footwork got changed, so you're healing more when you damage an enemy champion, this gives you more lane sustain for a ranged champion. This is why Corki, for example, in the mid lane is still really good. So for any AD carry building it in the bot lane, it's also really good, and Jhin is that champion. But only people in Master and above are really doing this, and it's by far the most consistent way to play Jhin. Dark Harvest is very greedy, and some games you're just not going to get many stacks. Fleet Footwork is always going to work. And as far as your items go, it's still very standard. Swifty boots are going to be your boots, then Gale Force Collector, and then you can either go Rapid Fire Cannon if you think you need the range. So if the enemy champions are quite scary and they have a lot of gap closes, they might jump onto your head, get Rapid Fire Cannon so you can keep them at range. But if you're really fed, and if you feel as if you don't need that range, get an Infinity Edge. You will one-shot pretty much everyone, even with Fleet Footwork. Now, next up, guys, we have a champion you can play in the jungle or in the top lane. But in the jungle, Press the Attack Trundle is one of the scariest things you are going to see. Think about it. Press the attack on a champion that has attack speed, movement speed, a Q on a very low cooldown that also heals him and slows you, and a big dildo that comes out of the ground. So Trundle's kit with Press the Attack makes him very scary, but what makes him even scarier, guys, for next patch is that Conqueror is staying nerfed, so any champion that goes Conqueror, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, these champions who can do damage to you in the early game are a lot easier to beat, and also the fact that you're not going Gore Drinker as your mythic means that you have an advantage in the items department as well, because you're going Divine Sundra as your mythic. And this is why, guys, Trundle at the moment has around a 52 to 53% win rate in every single elo, so even players in higher elo who are playing against players who can kite effectively are still having success on the troll. Just make sure to max your W second, and after Divine Sundra, get a Steris Gauge, and you're all set to pop off. Now, this next champion, guys, a bit like Jhin, uses Fleet Footwork, but he's actually a melee champion and resides in the top lane. This is Susan. And even though Fleet Footwork is really useful for Nasus in the laning phase, because it's giving you sustain and movement speed, which is useful to kite your opponents and just to stay alive, in the late game, this is really where this rune pops off. Because think about it, and Nasus with his Wither and then the movement speed from Fleet Footwork, it is impossible to escape, especially once you reach your Divine Sundra spike. And after Divine Sundra, guys, I'd highly recommend going Gargoyle, Stoneblade, and then Steris Gauge. The tankiness, the shields, no one is going to bring you down. And for your boots, make sure you go cooldown boots. So make sure, guys, you abuse the dog for the last patch of the season. And let me just say that he has a 54% win rate in bronze and above. 54%. Now, this next champion might not have a 54% win rate in bronze and above, but let me tell you something. Fizz in the mid lane is one of the strongest champions for next patch. Now, he's not getting buffed, but he doesn't need to be because he's so damn good. And it's really been the case ever since Riot buffed your E in 11.19, where the cooldown at rank 5 is now 2 seconds lower. This is 8 seconds overall now, so if you're going Leandra's Anguish with cooldown boots, which you really should be going, and then Zhonya's Hourglass, put your E on close to a 5-4 second cooldown. So how annoying would this be to play against? A Fizz jumping around all over the place while taking away half of your HP in the process? It's not very interactive, but you can, guys, if you don't actually want Leandra's Anguish for the ability haste and the tick damage, you can go Luden's Tempest for straight out burst damage, and I'd really recommend Luden's if you're snowballing out of the laning phase, and if the enemy champions are squishy. If they're a little bit healthier and tankier, Leandra's Anguish is going to help you kill them. Just remember to max your W second, and as far as your runes go, you're trying to capitalize on your burst damage by taking Electrocute as your keystone, and the rest of the page is very standard with Triumph and Coup de Grace and an attack speed rune in your minor runes. Now, this next champion, guys, is a top laner, and I said the Nasus in bronze and above has a 54% win rate. Well, this champion has a 54% win rate in Master and above. That's right, this is how broken Dr. Mundo in the top lane is. And Dr. Mundo hasn't really been mentioned that much this season as a great top laner, but like I said for Nasus, because Conqueror is worse off. All of these champions that run Conqueror are definitely weaker, and any champion that is still going Gore Drinker, it's still nowhere near as good as it was a couple of patches ago. So for Mundo, who may have struggled against these champions, so if you think of Darius, if you think of Set, these early game bruisers, he can actually beat them now with his Grasp the Undying. Remember, this keystone hasn't been nerfed like Conqueror, and when you pair this with Approach Velocity, which is giving you the stickiness you kind of desperately need, and this works so well with your Q, of course, and the slow. It makes you a real force in the top lane. Even though you're a tank, you're actually very strong in lane, and one strategy lots of people are abusing at the moment is rushing Anathema's chains. But before you do that, guys, make sure you get a Balmy Cinder. This is going to help with your wave clear and your trading potential, and this helps you after you get Anathema's chains to build a Frostfire Gauntlet. Now, after your Frostfire, you have many options. Randuin's Omen, if the enemy team has a lot of crit. You can go Hullbreaker if you just want to split push them 1v1. You can go Thormail if the enemy top laner and team composition has a lot of healing, or you can go Spirit Visage if you're against a lot of magic damage. Now, I know we don't have another AD carry on this list, but we do have a couple of supports, and these are in the top 10. So coming in at number 10, guys, for 1122, this is Soraka. Now, ever since Riot changed your ultimate, so your ultimate is ignoring Grievous Wounds applied to you and your teammates now, Soraka has become a premier support. And even though the amount you're healing has gone down, she has around a 53% win rate across all elos, so I don't care what elo you're in, picking Soraka is a very good idea. And I also want to tell you that in lower elos, lots of Sorakas will run maybe Exhaust or Barrier, but I'm telling you guys, if you can run heal and persuade your ADC to take Ignite or Exhaust, this is just the better way to go, because when your AD carries in a 1v1, Exhaust or Ignite is actually better than heal. So that's the first thing. And as far as your runes go, make sure you're taking Aerie with then Bone Plating and Revitalize. Now, as far as your items go, we're going Moonstone Renewer, then Redemption, which was buffed not so long ago, and then finishing this off with Chemtep Putrefier, Staff of Flowing Water, maybe even a Mikhail's Crucible. It just depends what you need to beat the enemy team composition. Now, ahead of Soraka, we're going all the way back to the top lane, and this next champion, like you might not want to play a Mundo or a Nasus, they're a little too tanky for your liking. Well, how about Jax? Now, I understand, Jax is a Conqueror-based champion, but what is Jax's passive? He gets attack speed, that's right. So what you can do, guys, it's like you can cheat the system. You can auto-attack the minions to build your attack speed via your passive, and once you have enough attack speed when you jump on the enemy champion's head, you can stack your Conqueror quicker than anyone. Now, what's also good for Jax is the fact that you don't go Gore Drinker, because you're going Divine Sunderer, which really at the moment is the standout fighter mythic. I mean, just wait until you hear the #1 champion. This has really pushed you to that elite level. And by the way, guys, for the rest of your runes, make sure you're running Biscuits and then Time War Tonic and starting Corrupting Potion. This is all to enhance your early trades in the laning phase. And as far as your items, after Divine Sunderer, taking Blade of the Rune King as Ceres Cage. And let me just say, there's some games you might want to rush a Blade of the Rune King before Divine Sunderer. Even though Divine Sunderer is still really good against tankier champions, Borg just shreds them even harder. So if you want to play a hard hyper carry top laner, guys, in 1122, Jax is for sure one of the best shouts. Now we're going to head to the jungle for the next champion, and I cannot remember the last time I mentioned Rammus in one of these videos. Now, why has Rammus all of a sudden become OP? Well, I just mentioned for Jax and I mentioned for Trundle earlier in the jungle that Conqueror champions are nowhere near as good as they were, nor are the Gore Drinker champions. So if you think of the champions like Lee Sin and Xin Zhao who can really ruin your day as Rammus in the jungle because you don't really want to get invaded by them, well, now they're a lot easier to actually beat in the 1v1, and they pose little to no threat to you anymore. And think about this as well, Rammus in high elo, where he's kind of struggled because players can typically kite a bit better, he has a 53% win rate. This is better than most meta junglers right now. Now for your runes, of course, we're taking Aftershock, and the rest of the page is very standard. And for your items, we're taking Turbo Chem Tank. This isn't Gore Drinker, so this is a big positive. And then following this with Thormail and then Abyssal Mask. Now Abyssal Mask might sound a little bit weird, but even if the enemy team doesn't have much magic damage, it's just the passive that is going to work so well with your CC. And this will work with your Q, your E, and your ultimate. Now you can play this next champion in the jungle, guys. I'm not going to begrudge you if you do, but playing Warwick in the top lane with Flash and Barrier is honestly one of the strongest lanes in the entire game, because you can't really lose a 1v1 with 2 summoner spells on your side, and with Press the Attack, this just enhances your 1v1 even more, and this is why Warwick has a 58% win rate in high elo in the top lane. And the build I'm going to recommend to you guys, I want you to start with a D-Blade, and then after this we're going to aim to get our Divine Sunderer. So start with a Sheen, and then after Divine Sunderer we're going to build a Blade of the Rune King, and then Titanic Hydra. Now why all of this? Well, Bork with the attack speed and the tank shred, just like Jax, really useful for a champion like Warwick with low cooldowns, and then Titanic Hydra for the cleave passive, which is going to proc off your Q, and the HP it gives you is just great for your survivability. And as for the rest of your rune page, guys, make sure you're taking Presence of Mind, Tenacity, then Last Stand, and take Resolve as your secondary tree with Second Wind and Revitalize. So if you want to dominate the laning phase, guys, you really cannot go wrong with Warwick. Now when a champion receives 4 buffs in one patch, it's very hard not to put them on a top 15 champions countdown. And of course, guys, this champion is Lux, and a couple of patches ago she got some of the most absurd buffs I have ever seen, and it's gone from making her a very average mid laner into one of the most superior mid laners on the entire Rift. You have more attack speed, which is really useful for controlling minion waves and trading with close range champions. Your passive is also going to last a little longer. Your E's base damage, which is the ability you max, is also up, and it's also scaling more of your AP, so later in a game this is going to scale even harder. And then your ultimate is on a 60-second cooldown at level 6. How is that even fair? Zaya's ultimate is on a 3-minute cooldown, and these reasons are why Lux has a 53% win rate. I don't know how many times I've said 53% win rate in this video, but it's true, these champions are OP. Now as far as your rune page, guys, comment, and then with Cheap Shot and Ultimate Hunter. Ultimate Hunter, again, we're trying to make use of that ridiculous buff that came into your ultimate, so we're making the cooldown even lower. And as far as your items go, Looter's Tempest and Sorcerer's Shoes, these are your two main ones. Then Horizon Focus is probably going to be your best second major item, and then after this, you can build whatever you want depending on the enemy team composition. Deathcap, Zhonya's, Void Staff, Magi's, Morellonomicon, just build whatever it is you need to cuck the enemy team. Now, by the way, if you are enjoying this video so far, make sure to leave a like down below. Now, if you thought Dr. Mundo with Approach Velocity and Grass the Undying was OP, well, Time Kench is just Mundo, but on steroids. Because Conqueror and Gore Drink have been nerfed, these bruisers and fighters, it's like you have become the most OP bruiser and fighter despite being a tank. And I also just want to point out here, guys, in terms of your rune page with Grass, I want you to take an attack speed shard and 2 armor or 2 magic resist depending on the matchup you are in. You don't really need the adaptive force, and the attack speed is going to help you proc your passive more. Now, in terms of your items, it's a bit like Mundo, but we're taking Frostfire Gauntlet first, and Anathema's Chains after this. Then you can really build whatever you want. Thornmail, Spirit Visage, Randuin's Omen. Just look at the enemy team's items and then build accordingly. If Time Kench is open, please lock him in. Now, just ahead of Time Kench, guys, coming in at number 4 is a champion who actually doesn't have the best win rate. It's around 50% to be honest, but here's the thing. LeBlanc is banned over 50% of the time in higher elo, and you know why? Because she's incredibly annoying and incredibly broken as well. The amount of damage you can do, the amount of slipperiness you have, like it's impossible to kill a LeBlanc without passive, and even though you might be lacking wave clear, you have all the setup you need so your jungler is always active and on the map, and you also have the mobility to get around the map and snowball out of control. Now, just like Lux, your core items are Looter's Tempest and Sorcerer's Shoes. And what I want you to build after this, guys, is a Cosmic Drive. I know Zhonya's Hourglass is a great item, and you can build it if you're against a Zed or Yasuo, something AD in the mid lane, but I'm telling you, you really shouldn't need it, because with Cosmic Drive, you're getting so much ability haste and movement speed as well, which is useful, that you don't actually really need the survivability that Hourglass gives you. Cosmic Drive also enhances your roaming potential, and therefore you're going to get more kills by running around the map, and this is what LeBlanc is really about. Getting free kills and setting up free kills with her insane mobility, and then after Cosmic Drive, this is when you can finish Zhonya's or get a Void Staff, Deathcap. Again, just like every other champion on this list, think about the enemy team comp and how fed you are, and then build whatever you need to build. But those two champions I just mentioned, guys, LeBlanc and Time Kench, are actually the second best in their role. Now, we'll get into the best mid laner and top laner very soon, but there's actually a support separating these 4 champions, and this is Sona, who is definitely the best support in League of Legends right now. And you know what's funny? Sona got nerfed in 11-19, but 2-3 patches later, she still has close to a 54% win rate. And it's really all down to your aficionado stacks and the fact that Moonstone Renewer has been buffed so much this season, and with cooldown boots, it's like this is all you really need. A bit like LeBlanc with Luden's Tempest and Sorcerer's Shoes, as long as you have Moonstone Renewer and cooldown boots, you are sweet. Now, as far as your runes go, make sure you're taking Airy, very standard of course, but in your secondary tree, take Resolve with Conditioning and then Revitalize. Revitalize, of course, for your heals. And as for your items, after Moonstone Renewer, take Chemtech Putrefy, because pretty much every champion in the game these days has some sort of healing, so this is going to negate that. And then finish this with Staff of Flowing Water or Mikhail's Crucible. Now, the top 2 champions, guys, for 11-22, I mentioned these in both our top and mid lane countdowns, and I don't think there's going to be any surprise here. Now, one of them I mentioned in the introduction. This is Katarina, and by the way, you cat mains are getting no tips. Just headbutt your keyboard, that's all you need to do to get wins. But to be honest, the real reason Katarina is OP is because she can bypass that Conqueror nerf that nerfed a lot of the things around her, and you do this by taking Electrocute. And in terms of her items, I still think that Katarina's build path with Nash's Tooth and Rocket Belt is one of the most OP going around. Nash's Tooth gives you on-hit and attack speed that is getting transferred into your kit, also 100 AP, and then Rocket Belt is giving you a free dash, magic penetration in the item and via its mythic passive, and once you top these 2 items off with Sorcerer's Shoes and then Zhonya's, it is just infuriating to play against because you one-shot everyone, and your game plan has to revolve around just stopping this one champion. That's how broken Katarina is. But there is one champion who is even better than Kat, and this one resides in the top lane, and this of course is Camille. Now, if you cast your minds back a couple of patches when Fiora, Riven was super broken, Camille was still there. So now the fact that Riven and Fiora have dropped off, even though Riven is getting buffed next patch, is nowhere near enough to make her on Camille level. Camille is therefore the standout top laner and standout champion in League of Legends for patch 11-22. And I don't need to say anything else. Copy down our runes, copy down our 3 core items, and that's all you need. Even if you feed during the laning phase, I don't care. You can still come back and hard carry games. She does that much damage, and she scales super well. She just has so many things going for her, and I'm going to start talking about it before this turns into a rant. So those are the 15 top champions, guys, for 11-22. If any of these are open, you are doing well if you lock them in. And as always, on your way out, remember to check out the GameLeap website, linked in the description and comment section. We have champion courses, champion guides, and also high-low VOD analyses where we pinpoint what it is the best players in the world do that everyone else doesn't do, so you can do the same and maybe become one of the best in the world. So check it out, and until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the Cheers. Oh.